Hi, Mr. Richard Winkle. Thanks for the video. Uh, I think, I mean, you say the right wing and stuff like this. I'm a nationalist. Much more than the Democrats and the Republicans. They're they've both betrayed, I think, the best interests of our country. Uh, but I don't know where you live here in the States or Canada or wherever. But I believe each and every people should have the right to self-determination and be free. That's why I'm against internationalism, like communism or Islamism, and I say Islamism because of restoration of the caliphate or something like that, or how the Muslim Brotherhood's trying to take over countries, basically, you know, um, have the same political party, and kind of like the communists did. Of course, fascism I'm against. Um, these forms of colonialism try to just destroy people. Uh, I I don't know that it's intentional, but this is an outcome. These very fundamentalist out there Protestants will attack things out. It's myth, urban legend, right? Like trying to equate like you said, Ishtar with Easter. He may have done that in the video, the end time 777 dude. But spreading deception, and it really got me a little fire under me because there's somebody who's actually looking into orthodoxy and saw this, and I was irritated by him talking about it, and he thought I was bashing him, and I was like, I'm not irritated at you. It's just when people say things like, it's like when somebody said Jesus raped a baby. I mean, when Christ said to Saul, Saul, why art thou persecuting me? He identifies the church as himself. So I mean, it, again, I'm sure you get just as frustrated at this stuff as I do. Especially since it actually cost me to be a Christian. Not money, but cost me. It's probably I may have to pay for it with my life one day, which these fundamentalist Protestants don't need to. There were evils that happened. The popes did. I mean, there were some unspeakable evils. But it's strange. The video, the part where I just couldn't. I mean, after you get too many things wrong, like if you're doing a documentary about America and you said, uh, what is it? George Washington discovered America when he landed on Plymouth Rock in 1776, and then in 1865, Christopher Columbus became the first president of the United States of America, and in 1925, the United States unprovokedly attacked Mexico and Japan and dropped an atom bomb on Japan out of unprovoked just hate, and that's what's called the Civil War. And then in 1945, the United States, along with the Allies, and the United States at that time was run by Jim Carrey, had invaded Russia and installed communism. People would be like, that's lunacy. If they were teaching it to school children, people would be very angry. Well, Christianity is something that's very important to me. When people who are trying to learn about Christianity stumble across stuff like this, it's like, I mean, if they have no knowledge of it, and most Westerners, there's no concept of how is the Bible compiled. Who, like you said, you were the only one in your church that knew who the church fathers were when you were Protestant. right? And it's scary that, and then people are like, well, all ideas are equal, or everybody you have your view, I have my view. Well, there's facts, and they can be checked. And when it deals with the issue of who Christ is, um, I mean that's a huge issue, and how you relate to him. But I think the main reason, or maybe a byproduct of this, or one source of it, something that could be beneficial for them, is that they, meaning Protestants, have the infections, the heresies of Augustine and of Anselm, of high Middle Ages. I mean, they're thinking that not even knowing that the Roman Empire had collapsed. I mean, I didn't know that anybody. You mentioned that. I didn't know that they didn't. Again, it's something that gets taught every year in history class from first grade through high school. And that the peoples aren't even the same peoples that are from these places anymore. Like, it's not like the French or the Gauls. They were Germanic people, and the Anglo-Saxons weren't from Britain. They came over from Sweden. But you're right. They might have made that Isis, Ishtar, Easter connection, which is, again, it's just as ridiculous as Jesus was Mithras, and Jesus was Horus, and Jesus was Attis, and Jesus was blah blah. But they still have the infections of Rome, and it's they're the byproduct of they're still Roman Catholics. They're not Roman Catholics, but they're using the text, the exact New Testament text of the Roman Catholic Church. The Roman Catholic Church said the Apocrypha, it's not actually. It's just kind of the Bible. Wait, Christians had accepted there's no Apocrypha. Maccabees and Judith and Wisdom and Baruch were never apocryphal. And then the Roman Catholic Church said, well, we'll put them as the Deuterocanon instead of it just being the Old Testament. And then the Protestants picked up on that and said, okay, well then we're going to cut those books out. Which were the same books that the Jews cut out because they thought they supported the Christians. Because they did support the Christians. I mean, you have no idea what Palm Sunday means. You haven't read Maccabees, right? But they still have these things, like, and somebody actually, this is a year or so ago, well, more than a year ago, called up Ray Comfort or whatever, or did the email thing into the Way of the Master and said, why do you accept the penal substitution that came up by Anselm? It's actually not in the letters of Paul. Ray Comfort said, well, you have to believe it's part of Christianity. It's a part of the Christian faith. So something that no Christian had ever said for the first 1,000 years. From this high Middle Age, I mean, from the 11th century, 11th, 12th century. 100 ants. The 11th or 12th century, right? Probably when, Rome was the most corrupt, or it might have got more, well, under the Borgias, the popes were pretty sketchy people. Well, there were some actually profoundly evil men that were popes of Rome. But then again, there had been, I mean, Nestorius was patriarch of Constantinople, right? And there were the iconoclasts, and you know, everywhere has their problems. But it's strange how they'll come up with the mythology, right? They're the urban legends, or they'll just make stuff up. But yet they won't address the fact that they still have Roman. They're Roman Catholic themselves, because they buy into the lie, or the line from the Roman Catholics. Well, we are the church. We are the one church that was started, and then so it must have become corrupted, because it's not as if Rome is just one branch of the, you know, there's countably 4 historical communions, right? The Assyrian Church of the East, I'll just call them Nestorians, right? That's what they are. Nestorians, the Monophysite, Miaphysite of the Orientals, the Eastern Orthodox of the 7 Ecumenical Councils, and then there's the Pope, right? We all run back into one point. At one point, we're the same. But the different tangents that have gone off on. And in the West, it seems that they've already bought into the Roman Catholic line of, we're the historic church, everybody else is heretics, and it's very weird that they wouldn't. But wait, hold on. Is there any other church that exists that had existed around that time? And I had actually heard someone try to say that the Calvinists exist. I'm like, John Calvin is after Martin Luther. He's around the time of Martin Luther. Luther had spoken out, then Calvin spoke out. How could there be Calvinists 1,500 years before Calvin was born? Oh, but they believed exactly what Calvin did. Do you have any evidence of that? Well, no, but they had to, because Calvin was right. Yeah, but we have a bunch of writings from you. No, we don't. All we have is the New Testament. And it's pretty scary that people are just like, well, there's the New Testament, and that's it, and it's however you decide and figure out how to, as if there actually is endless well, however you interpret the Bible. I mean, that's like Scientologists. Whatever true for you is true for you. And then you have a Arminianist and a Calvinist arguing with each other, and there's a Jehovah's Witness arguing with them, and then there's a one is Pentecostal, and none of them agree, and they all think the other one's going to hell. And they're using the same book. Probably the funniest thing is the KJV onlyists talk about Antioch. And where is it? I have the Peshitta. The actual Peshitta. I mean, you can't get more Antiochian than that. Ask him what. I mean, I want to ask him, why don't you use the Peshitta? Why? Alright, I gotta take this call. Take it easy.